Here we go. 3 different saws, all based off of the Husqvarna 50 chassis, all built completely differently. Let's give them a run and see what we think. Now don't forget, we got an event coming up at the end of July. I believe it's the 26th and 27th, if I remember correctly. It's the last weekend in July. We're going to be here. We're going to have fun. You know, you're more than welcome to come. All you got to do is send me an email for the details. homelightsmitty@gmail.com. So send me an email if you wish to attend. Alrighty. All right, so I have 3 of these. They're basically the Husqvarna 50 chassis. All 3 built in a different style. And we're going to give them all 3 a quick run today and just kind of check them out. You know what I mean? It's this is one of those things that's kind of fun to me, is to look at different styles and see what we think. So the first one we'll be running will be this one here. I believe it's a 51 recoil on a 50 chassis, but this one was built using a steel Super 028 piston. If you go with that piston, you basically ended up with a saw with good compression, ported numbers, and everything just by swapping out the piston. And then you can do a little bit of more port work, muffler mods and stuff to get them to perform better. This is probably the easiest one to build, the easiest way to modify these 50s to get them to perform better. Definitely the best option if you don't have the ability to machine your cylinders and so forth, because it's not required. You end up with a great squish number right off the start. Now the next one up, this is built off the Husqvarna 55 chassis. Little bit larger in displacement, just a couple of cc's larger. This has a 372 carburetor, but this one is when you go really high compression on an open port cylinder to try to help get your performance up there. I actually did not intend the compression to get as high as it did. It's just, it's hard to judge exactly where to stop whenever you're machining, you know, as far as where your compression, where you want it to land. So it's just one of those things that whenever I build them, it lands where it lands, you know what I mean? So this one does exceed 200 pound of compression. Last I checked, it was sitting in the 230 range pounds of compression. But this is kind of an example of when you take your Husqvarna 55 cylinder and put a whole lot of compression in it. Like say you have the lathes and the ability to do that machine work. This is kind of what you can expect to get to using that cylinder. Then finally, this is a Husqvarna 50 with a Partner 5000 top end. This is known to be the best, pretty much the best combination for the Husqvarna series chassis, their 50 series chassis, using the Partner 5000 top end. They are a closed port transfer design. This one is built to be a race saw. Now I did kind of blow it up there. It ate a screw, and the screw on the butterfly of the carburetor, but it ate that screw and did some damage. I swapped out the piston, and when I had it apart, I did some modifications to the piston. So after that happened, I actually lost 400 RPM. So I'm actually going to have to go into this, do another piston swap, then undo those modifications that I made in order to get my RPM back. But it's still tickling close to 13,000 RPM, high 12s right now. It was cutting at 13.2, 13.4, and you know, I lost a couple of hundred RPM, but it is what it is. But we're going to run all 3 of these saws. That way you can kind of see the difference between them. I mean, this one here has been built trying to get pretty much everything I can get out of it. It's just, you know, sometimes you got to go back into them multiple times. This one was built to see what we could do with an open transfer port design. And this one was built, actually not by me. This was built by a friend of mine, and he went with the or the Super 028 piston swap. So you're going to see 3 saws at 3 different performance levels, and this first one is going to be probably my suggested one for firewood work, a general work saw out of the 50 chassis. That's going to be this first one. The next 2, not so much. So I hope you enjoy this. There she is. Now, if you've seen my chain sharpening video, this is that chain, and I think she does just fine. You know, she's just a round file on a cheap chain, and I think it does just fine. It's nice and smooth. I can definitely go faster if I wanted to, but for a good firewood work type of setup, this is it. This is what I would suggest. All right, up next here is the 55, the Husqvarna 55. This is a high compression style build. This is a different kind of a chain. This is a square hand file chain. And I'm finding that whenever you do an aggressive square hand file like this one is, a normal raker height is wrong, or it doesn't work so well. So this is going to be an extremely hungry chain. It's really going to pull hard on the saw. I'm finding that a 25,000th raker is too deep for this type of setup. And I've talked to a few folks and they all agree. So it looks like 18 to 20 thousandths is actually where it needs to be. So we're just kind of waiting for it to kind of work out as I sharpen it, you know what I mean? But otherwise, this is it. High compression, support work, 372 carb. Let's see how she does. So there she is. And if you haven't noticed, this one actually has a tack on it. So whenever I'm pushing it through the cut a little harder, it's running at about 10.5. When I'm not pushing it, basically letting it self-feed, it's running at about 12,000. And the average is probably closer to 11.4, 11.5, somewhere in there. So that's where she's cutting at in the RPM range. So what do you say we grab the next one? Because it's the hottest one. So there she is. Husqvarna 50, Partner 5000 top end. The chain is Steel's 23RS, which I am finding to be pretty much the fastest chain you can get straight out of the box. She is ported, machined. I mean, this has had everything done to it. Carburetor. It's actually a 372 carburetor. So yeah, we're gonna see how this one actually performs. In fact, I forgot to mention that that last saw is the only one out of the bunch. I'm talking the 55 chassis, the one we just saw. That's the only one out of the bunch actually running an 8-pin sprocket. So I forgot to mention that it's running an 8-pin, but here we go. Let's give this one a run. This is the hottest one, but it's not as hot as it used to be. It had eaten the screw at the butterfly, at the choke, and did some damage. And after I rebuilt it, I had to put another piston in it. And I'd made some modifications to the piston that it didn't agree with it. So we lost about 400 RPM cutting. So I'm gonna have to put another piston in it to get those 400 RPM back. So if you've seen this saw in the past, she is a little slower now, but you know, we're gonna just throw another piston in it. We'll get her back. We got plenty of time here. So let's go, let's make some cuts and see how she's doing. Now, it's hard to maintain your torque once you get up to a certain point. And this one's struggling at that aspect, but it's built to cut like a 6-8 inch piece of wood and not something this size. So, you know, there's kind of that to consider, but I did lose some torque after I swapped out those pistons, and which is one of the reasons I want to, you know, get back in there and get to work on it. So I think we'll get her back once I do the piston swap. I'll just do a little bit, I'll basically undo the work that I did to the piston, you know. But yeah, she's a screamer, isn't she? Almost forgot what that saw felt like and sounded like whenever, you know, you get her screaming like that. She's just something else, you know what I mean? You can definitely tell when those RPMs are up there. But yeah, 3 different styles of builds. Out of the 3, I would say the 028 Super top end is probably the one I would suggest to do for firewood work. It is the easiest modification to do. It's a piston swap and maybe just a couple of little things and you're done. You could do that build in an hour, you know what I mean? So that's one of the reasons I suggest that build. It's fast, it's easy, and you end up with a great version of a firewood saw. Whereas the 55 Rancher, she's got you know, a bit more machine work done to her. Takes a little more time to do it, but I can tell you it does have more power all the way around. Has more on the bottom, has more on the top, a few more RPM, and so forth. So if you wanted to build a higher compression setup, yes, you could do that. If I would take that chain off and set it up with a little bit better chain, it would cut faster. Especially if I took it back to a 7-pin, it would cut even faster. It's a little bit much chain for that setup with the 8 tooth and everything. So, you know, it's one of those things we get to play with. But I wanted to make this video before I started sharpening on chain a bunch. And you know what I mean? Now, for this one here, this is the hottest one. This is really only good for one thing. You don't really want to take it to the firewood pile. You can take it to the firewood pile. You can go down there and make cuts as long as you're careful. You gotta watch your heat. No big long cuts. Give it breaks between cuts. You know what I mean? And keep it on smaller wood. So, you know, you could technically do it, but I would not recommend it. It's already going to have more of a shorter lifespan because of these RPM. It's a lot more wear and tear on the bearings and so forth. You know what I mean? But it is still probably my favorite, just because it is the most exciting to run. You know what I mean? It's fun to run something like that. It reminds you why you do this. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, there you go. A little video on these 3 saws, kind of a little comparison on them. 3 different types of builds, and it's up to you to decide which one you would prefer. I think the 028 Super top end is the easiest setup, but if you liked to get into machining and doing that sort of stuff, do it like that 55 style build. Bump your compression up a bit before you get in there and do your porting. So definitely be a good one to learn on, because those top ends are easy to replace. They're like, what, 25 bucks? You can replace the whole top end. And if you need to do 2 or 3 of them to get some practice, do it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll catch you on the next one. Later.